I'm recording your bedtime story. Again, we're reading from The Earth Dragon Awakes by Lawrence Yep. 10:30 a.m. Wednesday, April 18th, 1906. The Travis's house, Sacramento Street area. Sawyer whimpers at his master's feet. Henry and his parents gaze at the ugly sky. To the south and west, a sullen red light hangs above the rooftops. The sky looks like a blue blanket with a crimson border. Smoke rises like black stripes. Two strangers, a man and a boy, drag a trunk past them. A woman scurries after them. A baby wails in her arms. They look frightened. Do you want something to eat? Mrs. Travis calls to them. We have more than enough. They do not pause to stop. San Francisco's on fire. Get out now. The man waves north toward the bay. The sky there is still mostly blue. This is our home, Mr. Travis says stubbornly. Wait, Mrs. Travis says. She wraps the baby in her expensive shawl. She could catch cold. As the people leave, Mr. Travis hugs his wife. I've never loved you more. And Henry has never been prouder of his mother. Minutes later, three men pull a two-wheeled cart piled high with belongings. An old woman perches on top of the furniture. She is weeping and wailing. We're doomed, she keeps crying. A boy trails them, leading a dazed woman by the hand. She stumbles along. More people pass by. Many pull heavy trunks. Others drag their possessions along on blankets. A young man holding a wedding cake staggers by. Next to him is a woman wearing so many layers of clothing that she can barely walk. Henry thinks, people save the oddest things. Some pull carts or wheelbarrows or even toy wagons. Others use anything with wheels. They push cribs, beds, lawnmowers, sewing machine tables, or upright pianos along the street. On them they pile everything they can. The trickle of people grows into a stream, then it becomes a river. Because remember, San Francisco is a peninsula, and so it's on the end of the peninsula, and so the fires are pushing all of the people towards the bay. There's no escape. You can't really get past the fire. The trickle of people grows into a stream, and then it becomes a river. The smoke grows thicker across the rooftops. Houses are burning all around them. The flames peer hungrily down at Henry. Burning embers drift in the hot winds like angry butterflies. Some hiss as they land on the wet cobblestones. Others start small fires. Henry can see threads of smoke rising from their house. Amazing writing. Like, I don't know if you're noticing this, but it is amazing writing. Amazing descriptions, super detailed. Burning embers drift in the hot winds like angry butterflies. Some hiss as they land on the wet cobblestones. You feel like you're there. It's just amazing writing. Henry can see threads of smoke rising from their house. Mrs. Travis snaps open an umbrella. She puts it over her head. Maybe this will protect us from the sparks. Her husband and son do the same. It is so hot now that the moisture rises in steam from the street. The avenue is filled with people who resemble ghostly snakes. Even their clothes feel warm to the touch. An ember lands upon Mrs. Travis's umbrella and burns through the fine silk. She gives a cry when it lands on her sleeve. Mr. Travis puts it out with his hand. Sawyer gives a sharp bark of pain. Henry brushes an ember away from his pet's fur. His hand stings now. He wants to comfort the little dog, but he is too scared. As flames tower in the sky, Henry stares silently at the fire. "10:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. Wednesday, April 18th, 1906, from Chinatown to the Ferry Building." So the Ferry Building is still there, and it is right at the entrance of the bay. It's kind of right beneath the Bay Bridge, which the Bay Bridge hadn't been built in 1906. And the Ferry Building is just like it says, it's down where all the piers are. And that was where the ferry would pick people up because there were no bridges. There wasn't a Golden Gate Bridge then, and there wasn't a Bay Bridge or a San Mateo Bridge. So there were no bridges. So people, in order to go to Oakland or go across the bay to Sausalito, they would have to take a ferry to do that. And so the Ferry Building was where you would go to catch the ferry. Well, now there's going to be thousands of people trying to catch the ferry or get out of San Francisco, right? So they're all heading for the Ferry Building, which is very tall, and you can see it. It's at the end of Market Street. You can see it for miles. Even when the Earth Dragon lies still, Chin cannot forget he is angry. Fire has transformed the whole sky into a sullen red banner. The smoke makes Chin cough. Soot mixes with his sweat and stings his eyes. His face becomes striped like a tiger's. The merchant works him and Ah Quan hard. Ah Sing tries to help them, but he cannot do much. The merchant shoos him away. I don't pay for a crippled pirate, too. You don't have to pay me, Ah Sing says. But Chin and Ah Quan make him sit down. After that, Chin keeps an eye on his father. He makes sure that he rests. Why can't he just relax, he grumbles to Ah Quan. Because your father's not comfortable doing nothing, Ah Quan grunts. He's a brave man. Chin remembers when they were buried. He told me to save myself, Chin says. It sounds like him, Ah Quan says. But I wasn't talking about the earthquake. Your father came to a new country, and he's worked so hard. He spent so many years away from his family. That takes real courage. Chin had not thought about that. There are all kinds of heroes. The driver finally tells the merchant that his wagon cannot carry anymore. The merchant protests that he is not done yet. Ah Sing calls to the merchant and points to the fire alarm station. It is a small brick building on the other side of an alley on the west side of Portsmouth Square. The firemen are leaving. He waves at the Hall of Justice. The police and officials and soldiers are going too. The merchant slaps his side helplessly. Then he shouts to his family, "Let's go!" He settles up with Chin and Ah Quan. A small boy and girl totter out of the house. They are dressed in expensive silk. Their faces are clean. They stare at Chin's grimy face as if he is some strange beast. Don't touch that filthy boy, the merchant's wife scolds them. She is wearing fancy clothes and all her jewelry. She glitters like the Travis's chandelier. Some ash lands on her expensive silk robe, leaving a black spot. My best robe is ruined, she complains. She and her family need Chin and Ah Quan's help to climb up on the wagon. Their hands leave sooty marks. The merchant's wife is almost crying. She tries to clean off their handprints. Could you give my friend and his son a ride, Ah Quan? Asks the merchant. Only if you leave some boxes behind, the driver says. Of course, the merchant refuses. The horse can barely pull the load down the street. Ah Quan lifts his head. He whinnies like a horse. Then he squats down. Hop on, neighbor, I'll be your mount. Ah Sing climbs onto his friend's broad back. What's the price, he teases. More than you can afford, Ah Quan says and stands up. They start south. The Earth Dragon has destroyed far more downtown than in Chinatown, but the street is blocked by fallen buildings. They detour to the east. That block is already burning. The firemen and soldiers try their best, but there is no more water in the cisterns. They use knapsacks, blankets, and even brooms to beat out the small flames. They clear spaces with axes and shovels. That way there is nothing to burn. To Chin they seem like mice nibbling at a fiery monster. The heat is too intense. Chin, Ah Sing, and Ah Quan have to make detour after detour. This is like a maze, Ah Sing says. They reach Market Street at last. They stop there. The south side is a giant wall of flame. Some of the skyscrapers are already just steel skeletons. Their collapsed walls burn at their base like a garden of red and yellow flowers. Others are ablaze. They look like giant torches. Chunks of flaming buildings crash to the sidewalk. Specks of soot and fiery sparks fill the air. They look like hordes of angry flies. We can't get to the trains, Ah Quan says in dismay. He coughs from the smoke. The southern flames have cut off many others. Chin watches the panicked people stumble east along Market Street. Ah Sing points and says, they must be going to the ferries. Then so are we, Ah Quan says. With Ah Sing on his back, he breaks into a trot. Chin runs by his side. Automobile drivers desperately toot their horns. Drivers on wagons crack their whips. People are too frightened to step aside. Soon all the vehicles are stuck. Ah Sing, Ah Quan, and Chin dodge around all the obstacles. They always keep moving. There is so much smoke now it is hard to breathe. The fire roars in their ears. The heat makes them sweat. It is like being in a furnace. What if the fires have reached the ferries? Then they will be trapped. People begin to drop their belongings. Chin and his father and Ah Kwan stumble over hats, bags, boxes, and trunks. People suddenly scream in horror. Chin turns and looks over his shoulder. This is the worst part of the whole story for me. So, every city, every place has rats. There are rats everywhere. We just don't really see them because they come out at night and they're also kind of hidden. And so San Francisco is just full of rats. Well, when the fire starts coming, rats are smart. And so all of the rats are heading towards safety, right? The rats are all evacuating the city as the people are evacuating, maybe even a little bit before. So the rats are all trying to escape. Suddenly, people scream in horror. Chin turns and looks over his shoulder. A furry gray carpet sweeps towards them. Thousands of rats are trying to escape the fire, too. They brush Chin's ankles as they scamper past. At last, they see the Ferry Building. It towers through the haze. It looks ready to fall at any moment, but the flames have not reached it yet. Chin hopes the Earth Dragon will stay quiet until they pass through it to the ferries. The waterfront is filled with all kinds of ships. There are small ones and big ones. There are steamships and sailboats. There are passenger ships. There are also fishing boats. They stink from their loads. There are even a couple of Chinese ships called junks. Tugboats toot as if telling everyone to hurry. On some of them, the sailors shout the fare. They want a lot of money. Ah Sing would have to work months for the amount. There are the real pirates, Ah Sing says. Chin is worried. Do they have enough for the ferry? A huge mob surrounds them. It carries them forward towards the Ferry Building. Everyone is fighting to escape the fire. Men shove women and children and elderly people out of their way. They knock over injured people on crutches or in stretchers. Several have guns. They point them at anyone in their path. The gate goes up. The mob pours onto the ferry. Automobiles and wagons are abandoned. The sailors make people leave their trunks and luggage and boxes. They are dumped on a growing pile. Grab hold of my shirt, Ah Kwan says to Chin. Chin clutches the hem. Ah Kwan charges forward. They shove past the carts. They squeeze between wagons and automobiles. Ah Kwan is like a runaway bull. Then an automobile tries to lurch out of line. It bumps Ah Kwan. He drops Ah Sing. Save yourself, boy, Ah Sing commands Chin. The crowd surges around them. Their feet will trample Chin's father and friend. Chin swallows. He is terrified. But he remembers his father and the bull. He has to be just as brave. I'm not leaving without you, Chin says. He stands over them. He shoves, elbows, punches, and even bites. But it gives them time to stand back up. That was very stupid, his father says. He leans on Chin, but also very brave. Thank you. Bruised, they stagger forward. The crowd sweeps them over the ramp and into the crowded ferry. No one takes their money. Today the ferry is free. The boat rides low in the water. It is carrying too much weight. The sailors are afraid the boat will sink. They shove people back onto the pier. There will be another boat soon, they promise. Then they cast off the lines. The big side wheel churns the water white. Many people are left behind. They beg and cry and offer money. One man with a suitcase leaps from the pier, but he misses the boat. He is hauled back onto the land. The passengers are all silent. San Francisco has changed so much. All its tall buildings have fallen or are on fire. The overloaded ferry chugs across the choppy green water. A sheet of flame covers the ruins. It slithers across San Francisco like a dragon with red spines. Chin says a prayer for Henry. All right, we will stop right there. And then you can listen to the next few chapters tomorrow night. Have a good sleep. I'm reading you this totally stressful nightmare story. Hey, have a good sleep. All right. Talk to you later. Thanks for joining me.